Okay, and welcome on board everyone. Okay, I'd like you guys to turn off your WhatsApp. We don't need WhatsApp for today. Okay, all you need is Mr. Teo and his screen for the next. I hope we can end earlier today lah. Yeah, okay, but it depends on our progress. So our progress depends on your participation. So can you all help me? Okay, when I ask a question, you all can answer, right? If you all don't feel like answering, type it out. Yeah, exercise your fingers, can? Okay, so I would like to see or hear from all of you. If not, I have to ask again. If I keep asking, then it will be a waste of everybody's time. Clear? So year ones, I'm counting on all of you to make today's class a smooth one. So with this, let's do a quick content recap. Right? So last week, what have we covered? Okay, so someone brought up pairs, okay, shapes and magnitude of PED and PES. What else? Without looking at the book. Try not to look at the book. Okay, the moment you look at the book, okay, it means that Mr. Teo is not doing a good job. The best you can do is to look upwards. Every time my students don't know they look upwards, they'll think. Hey, but if you look downwards, I know something is not right. Unless you can look upwards and you attach your guidebook on the ceiling. What else? Try not to look down, look up. And look up means that I know that you're thinking. So scary, right? When I say don't look down, everybody start looking downwards. Start to find money on the floor. Money is not on the floor, unfortunately. Okay, all of you are seated. What else? Pricing strategy, okay, so very good. Okay, pricing strategy of PED. We also learned two acronyms, right? Okay, what are the two acronyms that we have uncovered? Okay, means and what? Pan. Okay, so means is for which one? PED or PS? Mean is PES and pan is PED. Okay, of course we learned a lot more lah. Okay, so today we'll do a thorough recap. Okay, so I just like to have a quick show of hands with the exception of my second years attending this revision class. Anyone else here have learned PED and PES or started? Can I have a quick show of hands? Started already? Okay, Raphael, no. Okay, the others? Okay, kind of started, Yuki. Okay, so some of the parents are concerned whether when I go away will I be behind. So I hope this explains that our progress is still kind of fast, right? But if I go away for 1 year, that's a different story. Yeah, I think 2 weeks is okay. And do you know where I'm going to? Have I told you guys where am I going to? Okay, I thought you. Okay, Jiaming, I told you. Serious?
Yeah, Mr. Teo, isn't it Iceland?
Oh yeah, Iceland. I'm looking forward to that. Very looking forward for that. Yeah. So on a side note, okay, if you'd like to follow my personal adventures on Iceland, okay, I will put it on my Instagram. Yeah. Okay, so you all can follow my Instagram if you all want to see Northern Lights, or if you all want to see the ice, the glaciers. Alright, you all can follow my Instagram. Okay, of course, it's optional. Okay, if you don't follow, I won't fail you. Okay, but today, whatever I cover, you all must know. Clear? Alright, so with this, okay, I'm going to move on to a quick recap. Okay, so what have we covered last week? Okay, so there's quite a bit of objective. Okay, so last week we covered item 1 to item 10. Okay, and this week I will spend more time on item 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right? Okay, in fact, I added one more. I'll share with you all in a short while. Okay, so let's do a recap on item 1 to 10. So we have definition and measurement of PED, shapes and magnitude of PED, determinants of PED. Okay, 4, 5, 6 is the reverse of PED, which is PES. Okay, we'll be looking at a comparison on when we put PED and PES together, okay, both elastic and inelastic, we'll see, okay, what are the effects on quantity when there's a price change. Okay, item 8 is specifically testing about price volatility, sharp rise, okay, significant increase in price, dramatic increase. Okay, and item 9 and 10, okay, would be concept of total expenditure and total revenue and pricing strategy. So today, before we move on to item 11, okay, item 9 and item 10, they are the foundation block for item 11. If not, you will totally flop this. Okay, so when I recap 9 and 10, please open up your ears and start to take notes. Okay, if there's anything that you'd like to take on your book, okay, please insert your notes here. Okay, and if you happen to miss out last week's lesson, okay, on objective 1 to 10, this is a quick recap. It's not meant to be a full content lesson for the earlier lesson. Okay, catch up on the records. Okay, so I'll insert a link in a card down here to on the earlier lesson that was missed out. Okay, it was part 1. All right. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Okay, definition and measurement of PED. Okay, let's look at page 11 and page 12. Okay, I am honestly, though I'm not sure where is the page 11 and page 12. Alright, so we can see that, okay, your PED, okay, this is the definition. Okay, so I've highlighted what are the important keywords. Okay, so you want to be concerned about ceteris paribus. Okay, and the formula. Okay, we are looking at the percentage change in quantity demanded. Okay, with respect to percentage change in prices of itself, ceteris paribus. Right? Do you still remember what is the keyword that I used last week about PED as compared to demand? Okay, what is the key differentiation? Demand versus PED. Okay, what is the key differentiation? This is where a lot of year 2s are still don't understand. Okay, they keep telling me the same problem, even in their recent scripts. Right, so PED, we are looking at quantity demanded. Okay, you see here already, quantity demanded. Right, this is a movement along your curve. Okay, whereas demand, we are looking at shift of your entire demand curve. Okay, so for PED, we are concerned about the slope of your demand curve. Okay, so we cannot change both of them. We cannot alter the slope and shift it. Okay, so ceteris paribus must hold. Okay, so if we shift, we cannot alter the slope. Okay, so today we'll be looking at the slope of your PED. Yeah. Okay, so please don't get these two concepts mixed up. Okay, so law of demand is still going to come into the picture today. Okay, so we will be looking at a measurement. Okay, we actually come up with the formula. So this was covered last week. Okay, so remember, okay, what is the, okay, when we are looking at your magnitude and your shapes of your PED, okay, I emphasize on 2 words, right, last week. Okay, when it is elastic, okay, your demand curve would be what slope when it's elastic? Okay, last week what did I mention? Okay, good, Jiaming. Who else? When your demand curve is, when your demand is price demand elastic, it is when changes in price leads to more than proportional change in your quantity demanded. Okay, it means that it is gentle, right? Gentle. Okay, so you want to put a mental note here for those who don't remember. Okay, for PED that's greater than 1 or elastic, okay, your slope will be gentle. Okay, while PED is lesser than 1, it will be steep. Inelastic will be steep. So last week we did a recap. Okay, we are concerned about for every change in your price, what happens to your quantity demanded, right? Okay, we also did a recap, or rather we also went through why do we need to mod your PED. Okay, your PED is always negative because of law of demand. Okay, that's why we take the modular sign, okay, to make it all positive. Okay, and we can see that when your PED is greater than 1, it simply tells you that a 1% increase in price will lead to a more than proportion 1% fall in quantity demanded. Okay, so your quantity demanded responds more to price changes. So when it responds more to price changes, this is how it looks like on the left side. For every increase in price, your quantity demanded for more than the increase in price. You can see the size. Okay, I'm just going to label in green. You can see this. Increase in price, quantity demanded, response more. Okay, so make sure you state the direction clearly. When price increase, quantity demanded will fall. Okay, so don't use the word change. Okay, be specific. Okay, it has to be a seesaw inverse relation. One goes up, the other goes down. Okay, likewise, okay, it is inelastic where an increase in 1% of price will lead to a lesser than proportional fall in 1% quantity demanded. Okay, of course, okay, all you can insert any hypothetical values inside. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so when it's lesser than 1, okay, it simply tells you that it is inelastic. So the example that we used last week was 10%, I believe. When there's a 10% increase in price, your quantity demanded will fall, let's say 7.8, let's say. Yeah, so it is responding lesser to the initial price change. Therefore, it is price demand inelastic. So this is how it looks like in a diagram. Okay, you can see that the initial increase in price, okay, is matched by a less than proportional fall in quantity demanded. So you guys will want to compare these two, okay, the magnitude of these two. You realize that the one on the left experienced a more than proportional fall in quantity demanded as compared to the one on the right. So the one on the right is less sensitive to price changes. The one on the left, more sensitive to price changes. Right? Sensitivity is also widely used, okay, in PED. Okay, so remember, when I ask you shape of your PED, you should be able to quickly tell me whether is it elastic or inelastic and steep or flat. Clear? So last week, I also went through the determinants of PED. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Right, the determinants of PED can be found in page 12. Okay, so make sure you know this 4 by heart. Every time when I quiz my students, especially my second year students, they will tell me P-A-N-T, pen. But when I ask them P-A-N-T, okay, none of them can tell me the determinants. Okay, so to be honest, okay, I don't really care what your school use. Okay, down here, this is the best you can have already. Okay, and the closest for you to memorize. Okay, so remember, what are the 4 components? Proportion of income span, availability and closeness of substitute, okay, degree of necessity or habitual good, time period. Okay, these are the 4. Okay, so for simplicity, I'm going to use one example. Okay, nature of your good, degree of necessity. Right? So for your degree of necessities, okay, what are we looking out for? Okay, remember, it is always good to illustrate 2, okay, polarities. When you want to explain PED or PES, 2 polarities. Right? So what is polarity? Meaning to say they are opposite of one another. Right? So what do you use on the daily basis? For instance, okay, we will consider, let's say, rice or noodle, right? Staple food. Okay, what is considered a non-necessity or good to have? Okay, maybe ice cream? Agreed? Okay, so these are the 2 polarities that you can consider. Okay, degree of necessity. So if a good is deemed to be a necessity in your staple diet, do you think it will be responsive to price change? Do you think it will be sensitive to price changes? Yes or no? Now type it out. Okay, when it is a staple food, okay, will it be sensitive or not sensitive to price change? Sensitive or not? Okay, great. Okay, Yuki and DY. Okay, I'm still waiting. Sensitive or not? So like I've said, I don't mind the wrong answer. All I need y'all is to try. Yeah, if you're not trying, then okay, it's probably harder. Okay, so okay, the correct answer is inelastic. lesser than 1, not sensitive to price change. Why? Okay, because this is a food that you consume on a daily basis. So when there's an increase in price, okay, the consumer will be less sensitive to price change. Okay, they will cut back on their rice, but not a lot. Okay, so this is how we want to play around with necessity. Likewise, for ice cream, okay, it will be the one on the left side. Okay, PED will be elastic. Okay, they will be very responsive to price change. Why? Because you don't consume them on the daily basis. Okay, it is a good to have. It's not a must have. Okay, so when there's an increase in price, your quantity demanded will fall more than proportion. Okay, for non-necessity goods. Okay, and therefore, okay, we can quickly ascertain for rice and noodle, what should be the size of PED? Greater than or smaller than 1? Type it out. If they are they are insensitive. Greater or smaller? Okay, lesser than 1. Okay, when they are sensitive, okay, greater than 1. And who down here have sensitive tooth? Yeah, when you eat ice cream, you have sensitive tooth. Yeah, maybe you can relate to this example. It's not a good example, but you can recall here. And when you eat ice cream, very painful, okay, sensitive. Okay? So remember, learn from examples, always a polarity. Yeah? Okay, another one, there is a habitual good. Okay, last week I think I covered things like alcohol, cigarettes. Okay, all these are habit forming. Okay, for habit forming goods, PED will be less than 1. Okay, less sensitive to price changes. Right? Okay, non-habit forming, non-habitual goods, greater than 1. So I want to make a mental note here, especially for my H2 students. A lot of students get this confused with YED. Alright, so especially when the concept of necessity, luxury good, okay, they always get confused with YED. Okay, we shall be learning next Saturday. Okay, so these two are not the same. Okay, YED, we are looking at responsiveness of your demand to changes in its own income. Okay, down here we are looking at price, okay, not income. Okay, so make sure you're able to differentiate the two. I'll touch on this again next Saturday. Yeah, okay, so down here we are strictly looking at price. Clear? Okay, so make sure this 4 sinks into your head. Later on it will be tested. Clear, everyone? Okay, and meanwhile, if you have any more questions, you can type it out. Okay, let me know how else I can help. Okay, determinants of PED I've covered. Okay, PES. Okay, let's go back to page 11 again. So PES, okay, you are concerned about the quantity supplied. Okay, with response to changes in its own price, ceteris paribus. Okay, and this is the formula. Yeah. So if you have learned PED, PES will come as a second nature because the shape and the magnitude, okay, they follow the concepts of PED. Right? It is elastic, it will be flat. It's inelastic, it will be steep. And likewise, okay, we can also see, okay, from the same diagram, okay, how is your quantity supplied? Okay, how sensitive are they to price changes? And last week I probably failed to use the word sensitive. Did I use the word sensitive? I don't think so. Yeah, okay, but in this case, okay, let's set the records clear. Okay, sensitivity. Right? How sensitive is the quantity supplied with respect to a given price change? So you can see that the diagram on the left and the right, okay, they experience a same magnitude increase in price. Agreed? From P0 to P1. Do you see that? It's the same. Okay, but the quantity supplied, okay, is going to respond more than proportion on the left side as compared to the right side. Okay, and why is that so? Yeah, okay, so the one on the left side tells you that, okay, your quantity supply is very sensitive to price. Okay, so PES is greater than 1. On the one on the right, PES is lesser than 1. They are not responsive to price changes. And so when I'm recapping this, a lot of students will always get PED and PES mixed up. especially the determinants. So a very simple way to distinguish the both is to look at the economic agent involved. PED are always consumers, households. PES will always be producers, something related to production. Okay, so this is a rule of thumb. When do we use PED and when do we use PES? We need to zoom into the economic agent involved. Also, don't blindly memorize. Don't ask Mr. Teo whether PED or PES. Yeah, you have to decide yourself. Okay, and the question, the extract will tell you, okay, which economic agent is involved. Yeah. Okay, so we can see that, okay, for a given increase in price, the one on the left respond more than proportion. You see, the size is so much bigger as compared to a minimal increase in quantity supply on the right. Okay, that's why the one on the left is said to be more sensitive. PS is greater than 1. Okay, the one on the right, lesser than 1. Okay, so concepts that are similar to PED are looking at the shape, elastic, inelastic, steep and flat, and we are concerned about a movement along your supply curve. Yeah, it's not a change in your supply curve. A change in your supply curve where it peaks. Movement along the supply curve, okay, which is what we call MINTS. M-I-N-T-S. Okay. So I'm just going to touch on, okay, use one of the illustration as an example again. Okay, one of the common ones is inventory and stocks. Yeah, so last week I used 2 examples to illustrate inventory and stocks. Did anyone take notes? What was the example that I used? Quickly, type it up. Okay, good, Jiaming. Means that you're taking notes. What about the rest? Okay, Raphael, good. What was the example? Yuki, good. Right, the example that I used was canned and fresh food. Okay, or to be more specific, canned fish and fresh fish. Right, make sure you take notes. Okay, if not, okay, you're not maximizing your benefits here. Yeah, so your book should be ideally, okay, littered with notes. Okay, the more clean it is, the more concern it is, the bigger problem it is when you revise. Okay, so these are the 2 polarities. And for inventory and stocks, I used one of the keyword, okay, to illustrate, okay, the key difference. I use a P word. Anyone remembers what's the P word that I've used? To differentiate between these two goods. How can these 2 goods, okay, be differentiated with one keyword? Good, Jiaming. What's the P word? Good. Okay, so who else? Okay, so the P word is what we call perishable. Right? So we can see that between the 2, which one is going to be more perishable? Fresh fish, right? Okay, so fresh fish will be relatively more perishable as compared to canned fish, or canned fish will be relatively more non-perishable. Okay, so the keyword perishable tells us how many stocks we can take, or how many inventories we can keep. Agreed? So for fresh fish, can we afford to keep inventories? Yes or no? Okay, so inventories level is going to be lower. Okay, as compared to canned fish, inventories level is higher. So what can we deduce about the respective PES value? Okay, which one will be more responsive to price changes? Which one will be more sensitive? The one that you can keep or the one that you cannot keep? Okay, let's deduce. Canned fish. Okay, what is the size of your PES? Greater or smaller than 1? When you can keep a lot of stocks, you can afford to keep in the warehouse. Okay, good, Jiaming. Okay, will your quantity supplied respond more to price changes if you can afford to keep them more? Right, so PES will be greater than 1. Okay, if you were to look back at the diagram, okay, it simply tells us that we can afford, okay, to keep a huge quantity, okay, of your canned fish in the warehouse. Therefore, when there's an increase in price, producers can readily sell their canned fish in the open market. Okay, quantity supply is going to be more sensitive. Okay, whereas for fresh fish, we realize that because of the nature of perishable, you cannot keep a huge quantity as inventories. Therefore, fishmongers will have issues keeping them or reacting to price changes. Why? Okay, because you cannot keep overnight fish, right? And therefore, when there's an increase in prices of fresh fish, okay, producers are unable to keep up with the increase in price. Okay, they will find it more restrictive, okay, or okay, quantity supply will increase lesser as compared to canned fish. Okay, so it's always about getting the value right, okay, and telling a story from polarity. So for the students, okay, who find this confusing, make sure you recap on the clip last week, specifically on determinants. Very, very important. Okay, and you have to get the size and the magnitude right immediately. Okay, you cannot afford to even have a 2-second thought. Okay, it means that you are not familiar. Okay, and that's very dangerous, especially when you do case studies. Is that clear? Okay, very, very important. You must know these 5 by heart. Okay, so I am going to move on to overview of price changes. Okay, let's look at page 14, everyone. So page 14 is a summary. It tells us that when there's an increase in price, okay, a given price, what is going to happen to your quantity demanded? You can see that the blue and the red represents what? Okay, one is more sensitive and one is less sensitive. So with a given increase in price, okay, the blue will experience a more sensitive or a more than responsible fall in quantity demanded. Okay, because of its shape. Okay, it is more flat, more gentle. Okay, if it's relatively more inelastic, it will fall lesser. Okay, likewise for PES, we are going to use the same approach. Okay, for a given increase in price, we are concerned about how producers can respond to price changes. Okay, the one in red tells us that, okay, we're going to increase lesser, okay, as compared to the one in blue. Okay, so the one is red is less sensitive or less responsive to increase in price. Okay, so remember, okay, pan and means, okay, can be reflected, okay, through the shape of your demand curve. Alright, okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, if you find Mr. Teo very naggy, okay, because I need you all to have a good solid foundation before we cover today's concept. Okay, price volatility. Okay, so the first key concept that we covered last week was price volatility, okay, or exam application. So the keywords that you want to be concerned about is sharp increase, acute increase, a dramatic increase, significant increase, steep increase in price. Okay, whenever you see all these keywords, okay, elasticity must be present, right? So the condition, okay, you have to break it down into 2 halves. Okay, the first half is to look at the rise. A rise in price has to be satisfied by a shortage, right? Shortage will lead to upward pressure on price. So a shortage can only be satisfied with an initial increase in demand or fall in supply. Okay, and together, okay, you will pair this with PED and PS. So if you identify from the extract there is an initial increase in demand, you pair this with PS. Okay, it's always the opposite. Okay, if you identify from the extract there is an initial fall in supply or any changes in your web picks or any fall in your web picks, Okay, this is rise in your Egypt. Okay, then you have to pair. Fall in supply, pair together with PED. Yeah, so these are the two representations that we have drawn last week. Only when your demand and supply curve is sufficiently steep enough, then we will experience a more than proportional increase in price. Okay, for both cases. You can see that the price increase more than the changes in quantity. Alright? So this has been tested last week in the practice question. So if you didn't do well for the practice question, revisit it today, okay, or by the end of today. And today's practice question, okay, will be the harder version. Okay, it's not on price volatility, right? And okay, I'll move on to a recap of your total spending and total revenue. Okay, so this one I think I have covered the week before under demand and supply, the area under your demand curve, right? And we also talk about pricing strategy. Okay, so if your demand is price demand elastic, then okay, we should lower price to maximize revenue. Okay, this is what a firm should do. Likewise, if the demand is price inelastic, steep, then a firm should strive to raise its price, okay, in order to increase its producer revenue. Right? It's always looking at, okay, the rectangle, or you can use 4 points here. Right? So this is a very quick recap of what we have done under revenue. So far, questions for me before I move on to today's topic. I've spent the past 35 minutes on a very thorough recap. Okay, so today will be hinging on what we have covered last week. Okay, so if you get it, good. If you don't get it, okay, God bless you. Okay, then you can rewatch the clip. All right. Okay, I've done a series of recap. Okay, so I'm going to move on to today's objective. Item 11, okay, would be the most important. It will be tested today. Okay, item 11. So make sure you listen carefully. Okay, total expenditure and total revenue that is related from the PED perspective. All right. Item 12, effects on tax. Okay, so this will be related to market failure in the future. So I will be covering some advanced concepts here. So when I cover this, you may or may not know. It's okay. But I would like you to take down notes. Because eventually, we will cover them. And you will understand them. But the reason why I go through so many advanced concepts here is because I want to show you that PED has a lasting effects on all your future topics. If you don't get PED, it's very dangerous. Okay, you will flop all your future topics. So you must invest time in PED and PES and get it right, especially PED. So item 12, okay, item 12 and 13 is what we're covering next week. Okay, price control, okay, and tax and subsidy. Okay, tax and subsidy, okay, next week. Okay, price control, I think when I'm back, I'll cover that, okay, in depth. Okay, but I'm going to show you in the diagram how it looks like. Okay, when we have price control. And probably my second year students will appreciate this a bit more. Yeah, because you guys already have experience with this. Okay, so item 14 is about firms and decision. Okay, I'm not sure whether I would like to show you the diagram, but probably a bit too premature. Let's see how it goes. Okay, I will look at all your question mark faces before I decide whether I want to go even deeper. Firms and decision. Yeah. And my second year students can adhere to this, right? The firms and decision is the hardest topic, right? Among all your micro topics. Yeah, that's why you will see most of them coming back in the second and third quarter when I cover this. Okay, Marshall Lerner Condition is a second year topic. Okay, I will briefly touch on that as well. Okay, what is the role of of second year topic here? Yeah, I think Cheryl asked me this before. Yeah. Okay, so it's related to PED and PES. Okay, but today, if you forget everything, that's item 11 is the most important. Clear? Okay, I'll spend more time here. Alright, so with this, let's do a quick recap. Okay, so consumer spending, okay, and total expenditure and total revenue. Okay, we will often encounter this kind of question, okay, in case studies and essays. Okay, so especially essays, okay, on expenditure and revenue. Okay, so I believe I covered this, okay, in demand and supply before, but I just want to cover this again. Okay, so please join me in this drawing activity if you have space to draw. Okay, try to find some place to squeeze this in. Okay, so we have your demand and your supply. Okay, this is your equilibrium, price, and quantity. So whenever the question revolves around producer revenue, or total expenditure, okay, we need to be careful, or we need to be mindful. Okay, we need to identify the 4 points. Okay, so learn to insert an origin here, okay, and your initial equilibrium point. Okay, so in this case, you will have your initial total revenue or total expenditure will be 0, P0, E0, Q0. Okay, so let's put this here. Initial TETR 0, P0, E0, Q0. Right? So TE means consumer spending. TR means producer revenue. So at the surface level, in the exception of a tax, in the absence of a tax, okay, your consumer spending and producer revenue will be the same. What is spent is what is earned. What is spent by household will be what is earned by producers. Is everyone following me? This is a very simple logic. So given a increase or fall in demand, okay, you can see this. Okay, your price and equilibrium price and quantity will go up, right? Okay, so with an increase in demand to D1, your total spending and your total revenue. Can you all tell me, does your total spending went up or went down? Went up or down? Type it out quickly. Right. Okay, so the magnitude will be 0, P1, E1, Q1. Okay, likewise, when there is a fall in demand, okay, we can see the same. Right? There will be a fall in equilibrium price and quantity. And your total spending and total revenue will fall in the same direction. Simple enough? So I'm going through this for a very good reason. Okay, that your total expenditure and total revenue, when you experience a change in your demand, okay, there is no assumption required. You do not need PES concept. No need. Okay, regardless of the slope of your supply curve, your expenditure and your revenue will go in the same direction as your demand curve. Okay, so this is the first concept that I want to sink in. Everyone, please follow me. But when there is a change in your supply, okay, so this is what we call change in your demand. Okay, when there is a change in your supply, we can't be sure. Okay, so I'm just going to show you an example. Please join me in this. Okay, remember when you start drawing, then this is where you start learning. Why is it that we can't be sure? Okay, so you can see that I have two scenarios here. There's two diagrams to be drawn. Okay, so let's say, okay, there's a change in supply. Let's consider this. Okay, there's a wet peaks factor, right? So what happens? Let's identify. Okay, what is T? Everyone, please type out what does T stands for. T. For students who are new, we can refer to the initial first few pages. Okay, you should be able to come out by this immediately, right? So when there is technology, there's improvement in technology. Can you all tell me, how is your supply curve going to shift? Shift right or shift left? Okay, good. So I'm just going to draw this. Okay, so this is a hypothetical example of, okay, increase in supply for both. Okay, let's assume that the magnitude and the slope for the supply curve is the same for both. Now I'm going to insert the demand curve. Okay, remember, when there is a change in supply and you are expected to deduce the total spending or total revenue, you must make an assumption of the PED. It is compulsory. The earlier example, we can be silent about PES. But the latter example, we must include PED. And I'm going to show you why. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to show you a flat demand curve. The second one, I'm going to show you a steep demand curve. So flat demand curve, elastic or inelastic? Type it out. Flat. So what should be this? Demand elastic or demand inelastic? Demand elastic. Demand inelastic. Right? So now, let's look at this. So the initial price and quantity will be P0, Q0. Okay, let's insert the 4 points here. 0, E0. You see that? And when there is a increase in supply, we can see that, maybe I change another color so for you all to see better. P1, E1, Q1. So when there is an increase in supply, holding your demand curve elastic, what can we conclude about your producer revenue or your total expenditure? Can you all type out? Using the same analogy I've covered earlier on. With an increase in supply, when your demand curve is sufficiently elastic, what is going to happen to your producer revenue or consumer spending? Goes up or goes down? Okay, good, Jiaming. Good, Raphael. Okay, DY, good. Okay, so let's identify. Okay, your initial spending or your revenue will be 0, P0, E0, Q0. Yes, everyone? These are the 4 points. Okay, the rectangle in blue. Okay, your final will be 0, P1, E1, and Q1. I'm so sorry it's blocked. Okay, 0, P1, E1, and Q1. Right? Okay, so it is quite obvious that the green is bigger than your blue. Agreed? Okay, because with a fall in price, your quantity will go up more than proportion. So, okay, you can also, you can compare. Okay, so this is bigger. Okay, so the after is bigger. There will be increase in consumer spending or producer revenue. Another way to show this is use rectangle A, B, C. Okay, the initial will be A and B. Final will be A and C. A will be intact, right? No change in A. Okay, so it's only going to be looking at changing B for C. Right, C is clearly bigger. Read? If not, you probably need a new pair of specs. You don't need Mr. Teo here. Yeah. Okay, so remember. But when your demand curve is sufficiently inelastic, this is where you have to learn to keep your you have to learn to draw steep and flat. Okay, because all your details is going to matter. If it is not sufficiently steep or flat enough, you won't get a realistic outcome. Okay, so I'm going to show you how it looks like. So first of all, let's join me in this activity. Okay, P0, Q0. Do you see that? So this is your initial expenditure or spending. 0, P0, E0, Q0. Right? Likewise, okay, as a result of an increase in supply, your price is going to go down and your quantity is going to go up but by what? But by how much? Yeah. Okay, so your final expenditure or your final revenue will be 0, P1, E1, Q1. Agreed? So what can we conclude about the consumer spending or producer revenue? As a result of demand being inelastic and an increase in supply. What happens here? What happens to your producer revenue? Go up or go down? Okay, went down. Okay, so your producer revenue went down. Okay, your consumer spending went down. Okay, we can also use the same approach, A, B, and C. Okay, so the initial revenue is A and B, or initial spending is A and B. Final revenue and final spending is A and C. Okay, we can clearly see that the initial is bigger than the final. So through this illustration, we can see that whenever there is an increase or fall in supply, we need to make an assumption of the PED in order to justify what happens to your consumer spending or producer revenue. Okay, so when you look out for the question, okay, you can look out for what is the initial condition. If it is a change in supply, it need not be increase, it can be fall as well. It can be fall in supply as well. We will still use the same approach. Then we need to assume what is the PED. Is it elastic or inelastic? Okay, based on which PANT factor. Then we piece them up like this. Then we'll deduce the outcome. Okay? Okay, so make sure you pair this with PED. Okay, this combination must be present. Okay, especially this. So later on this will come out. I will show you how it comes out. Alright, okay, I am going to move on to the next part on effects on taxation. Okay, so effects on taxation, I'm going to show you a simplified model. Okay, but when we move on to market failure, okay, this is where this point really shines. You will often find yourself using this as a limitation for demerit goods, market failure. Okay, but okay, let's look at page 20 first. Okay, I want you all to focus on this. Alright, so a tax is ineffective to curb consumption of habitual goods. Okay, goods that are price demand inelastic. Okay, inelastic goods, or more important, price demand inelastic. Okay, please add these two terms here. Price demand inelastic. So the example that I'm going to show you here is using a demand and supply framework. Okay, I'm going to show you, but okay, when we move on to externality, when we cover market failure, okay, this is the actual framework that we'll be adopting. Okay, but I'm just going to show you demand and supply, a simplified illustration. So let's say if the government wants to curb smoking on cigarettes, right? Earlier on, we have established that cigarettes is a habitual good, right? Agreed? So if it is a habitual good, what should be the PED value? Less than 1 or greater than 1? Okay, PED should be, if it is a habitual forming good, okay, less than 1. Right? And what should be the shape of your demand curve? Steep or flat? If it's less than 1. Steep or flat? Type it out. Okay, it should be sufficiently steep. Okay, so this is your, this is your demand curve, sufficiently steep. Okay, of course, like I said, okay, this is a simplified illustration. When we move on to externalities, then we'll use another different approach. Please don't draw this when you learn externalities. Okay, so we know that a tax is going to drive up your production costs. Okay, so I want you all to identify, to see this. Okay, this is your initial price and quantity. Okay, final price and final quantity. Okay, so we can actually see that when we impose a tax on a good, there is demand inelastic, price demand inelastic. You realize that the increase in price, okay, will result in a lesser than proportional fall in quantity demanded. So in a nutshell, it is not very effective, okay, to curb smoking. Okay, why? Because the idea or the objective is to lower the quantity significantly, right? But because demand is price demand inelastic, therefore, okay, you are not going to curb, okay, your consumption of cigarettes significantly. Okay, so this is one way to illustrate this. This is a simplified way. Okay, so next week when we cover tax and subsidy, okay, we will learn that producers will incur a higher production cost. Okay, and they will pass off the higher price to consumer. Okay, consumer will bear a higher price. Okay, they will share the tax. Okay, this is what we'll be learning next week. Okay, so with this, okay, I'm going to quickly move on. Okay, I'm not sure whether I want to cover the rest. Okay, maybe I will cover a little bit more on price control. Okay, then I'll probably skip the other two. Okay, the other two is getting more and more advanced. Okay, price control. Okay, price control is something that we'll be learning really soon. All right, so I just want you all to make a mental note. Okay, so these are the two price controls that we'll be learning. Okay, price ceiling and price floor. Okay, we'll be learning in about 2 to 3 weeks time. Okay, so how is PED and PES going to matter? Okay, PED and PES is going to matter in the size of the shortage and surplus. Okay, so I'm just going to use the existing diagrams to show you how can we aggravate the shortage or the surplus. So if you want the shortage or the surplus to be relatively bigger, okay, especially for my second year students who are attending this, I can show you quickly. My first year students, all you need is to just make mental note. We'll eventually come back here. Okay, but PED and PES is a limitation that you often see in your notes. Okay, so all you need to is just to make your demand curve sufficiently more price elastic. Okay, and your supply curve relatively more price elastic as well. Okay, so we can see that the degree of shortage will be bigger. Okay, likewise, okay, for a price floor, okay, if you want to aggravate your surplus, all you need to is just to make them relatively more price elastic. Okay, likewise, your demand curve will be relatively more price elastic as well. Okay, then your degree of your surplus will be bigger. Right, so this is very simple illustration on how we want to illustrate the magnitude of the shortage or surplus. Okay, when we have price ceiling and price floor, okay, we can play around with the slope of your demand and supply curve. So we'll be learning this in due time. Okay, don't worry about that if you don't understand. Okay, this one probably I will cover this in the future. I won't be drawing this diagram. If not, I think all of y'all will fall asleep. Yeah, okay, so I will cover this somewhere in the third term. Okay, firms and decision. Okay, so I just need you all to make a mental note. Okay, that firms, okay, with higher market power, okay, will experience a more inelastic demand curve. Okay, in the future, we'll be learning what is the concept of market power. What are the profile of firms that exhibit a higher market power? And we can see that when your PED is sufficiently more inelastic, it has a higher pricing decision. Okay, it can charge higher price, and it is going to be more allocative inefficient. Okay, so all these I will show you, okay, when we are covering firms and decision. Yeah, so for my year 2 students, please check back with me somewhere in term 3. Okay, I will cover this concept. Yeah, okay, this is going, but we realize that PED still comes into the picture. Whatever they talk about, PED will always come in. All right, okay, PED. Okay, I don't want to draw the diagram. Okay, I just give you all a simplified explanation. Yeah, okay, make a mental note. Okay, lastly, Marshall Lerner Condition. Marshall Lerner Condition is what you all will be learning next year. That's assuming that all of you all promote. Yeah, the touch wood, find something that's wooden to touch. Okay, so Marshall Lerner Condition, we are concerned about exchange rate. Okay, so when there's an exchange rate appreciation or depreciation, okay, we need to make an assumption that your PED of your exports, okay, summing up with your PED of your imports, okay, the modulus is greater than 1. Okay, in order to affect your net exports. Right, so yes, okay, if you are with me next year, I promise you I'll cover this. Okay, but you see that PED of your exports and imports are coming in again. Right, Cheryl? Yeah, okay, so I can't overemphasize on how important PED is. Yeah, it will have lasting effects in all your upcoming topics. So today our emphasis is on this expenditure and revenue. I spend a lot of time on this. Make sure you guys get this right. Clear? So with this, okay, I'm going to quickly sum up how exams can be tested. Okay, so last week we learned about price volatility with sharp, acute, and steep. Okay, I hope you guys still recall. Okay, if not, we recap on last week's time practice. We learned about how a firm should price its goods. Pricing strategy. Okay, if a firm experience a good that's sufficiently price demand inelastic, they should raise price in order to maximize total revenue. If it's price elastic, they should lower price. Okay, so item 3 is what we have spent earlier on. Okay, I have shift your supply curve, and we need to make certain assumptions on your PED. Okay, in order to justify your TE and TR. Okay, we'll find it out how is it going to be tested immediately later. Alright, so PED. Okay, when we cover the concept of demerit good in market failure, we'll find out that how PED actually weakens the effects of a taxation. Okay, this is a constraint of a taxation that you often use, okay, when you want to talk about tax policies. So just now I've also shown you that PED and PES can be used with price ceiling and price floor in order to illustrate the magnitude of your surplus and shortage. Okay, pricing decision, PED in firms and decision. Okay, I will show you somewhere in term 3 how does PED actually affects the ability of firms to price its goods, okay, and allocative efficiency. Okay, and lastly, okay, Marshall Lerner Condition. Okay, I will cover more of this on exchange rate. Okay, when I cover exchange rate policy in macro. Okay, so for the year 1s, it will be quite a journey there. For the year 2s, you'll see this very soon. Okay, I will explain the effects of PED and PES. PED of your exports and import. Okay, using the J-curve effect. Okay, so with this, God bless all of you. I hope later on you all can survive the the time practice question. Okay, but I will give you all sufficient hints before we proceed. Can? So with this, I hope you guys can be back quickly. Once you are back, can turn on your webcam and then we can possibly end earlier. Clear? Okay, thank you. I'll see you guys in a short while. If you have questions for me, you can stay back and ask. Thanks. Right, girls, are you back? Girls? Thank you. So I would like y'all to check the term, the LMS. Okay, are we all seeing the same question paper? Okay, if you're seeing the same question paper, can you please sound out on the chat so that I know how to help? Or and the J ones probably know where to get. Okay, Cheryl, can you check? This is your first time utilizing the. Oh, Cheryl can. The J ones, y'all see the same question paper? DY? KM? Oh, KM already replied, yeah. DY? Yep. Rafael, okay. Lesson 5, I think this is lesson 5. Okay, sweet everyone. So this, okay, is one of the latest question types, okay, for elasticities. And it originated from a H1 question. Okay, the H1 is actually one of the more frontier or the more modern ways of changing up questions. And I recently observed that the H2 side is picking up how H1 questions are being tested. Okay, so if you like to put yourself to a test for case studies, always try the H1 side, okay, because they are definitely tougher. Okay, so now let's look at this case study. Okay, I'm going to guide you all through on how to approach this. Okay, so there are two criteria to this question. Explain and comment. Okay, so explain and comment question requires you to adopt a thesis and antithesis approach. Sometimes they don't use the word explain, you just put comment. Whenever you see comment, it will become thesis and antithesis. Okay, so this will not be your last time seeing this, I can assure you that. I just want you all to be extra sensitive to comment question, thesis and antithesis question. Okay, so what do we mean by thesis and antithesis question? So first of all, we got to form a thesis first. Okay, so how do we form a thesis? So now we need to look at the extract, or we need to look at the question further. Okay, what are the likely impact of the events? There are more than one event here. And how does it affect your revenue of producers? Okay, so I put revenue. I don't need to highlight more. Okay, revenue of producers. So remember, whenever you see revenue or expenditure, it will struck an immediate bell, right? Okay, that we need. What do we need? Okay, we need this. Do you see that? We need this. Okay. So first of all, okay, we need to deduce what happens to the revenue. Can we make a deduction on the revenue of producers? Okay, or rather the mobile data operators. Can we make a deduction? Is revenue going to go up or go down? If you state your answer, you have to justify which aspect of the extract tells you that. So we have to form a big picture first, right? What is going to happen to the revenue? Try to deduce. Is it going to go up or go down? All right, DY, correct. Okay, but I don't quite get compliment goods. Okay, there's no need for compliment goods here. I'll show it in a short while. Okay, so some of you, I just want to hear up or down. Okay, so what do you all think are going to happen, or rather, how is the mobile data provider or the telcos, how are they going to, how is their revenue going to be affected? Okay, so some of you all brought up down. How do we know that? Okay, so the key word here is this. Do you see this word? Struggling. So why are firms struggling? So what is the assumption that we can make here? Struggling means that revenue is going to fall, right? Yes. So our thesis, okay, we are going to establish why revenue is going to fall. Our antithesis, we want to state how revenue will remain unchanged or it may even go up. So this is how we form a thesis and antithesis. Okay, we need to identify what is our thesis. Antithesis will be the opposing view. Clear, everyone? And the thesis can always be found from the question easily. So, how can we justify a fall in revenue? So if you were to look back, okay, we can see that the first diagram down here shows us that one of the change in your demand curve will illustrate a fall in revenue, right? Is there an increase or a fall in demand curve that will result in a fall in revenue? Increase or decrease in demand curve? Right, decrease in demand, fall in demand. Okay, great. So remember, the question states events. So it is more likely that it has to be satisfied by a demand and supply condition here. Right? So earlier on, okay, I have shown you that a fall in demand will lead to a fall in total revenue. Clear? So your job, I'm not going to obviously spoon feed everything, right? Is to find out which of the Egypt factors is present. Which of the Egypt factors is present? Okay, you have to identify one from the extract to justify why. Is everyone clear? I realize that I'm giving too much. I might as well don't do. But okay, I would see this like a hand-holding session. Okay, I don't expect you all to succeed in the first try. It doesn't matter, but it's the willingness to try. Okay, and the willingness to get it wrong and learn from that. Remember, we learn from mistakes. We don't get the first try, it's fine. But I want you all to get what we learned here. Alright. So later on, look out for the extract. Look out for factors that result in a fall in demand. Either of the Egypt factors. Now, this is the tricky part. How do we justify a fall in your revenue using supply? Okay, there are two scenarios that you can consider here. Okay, the first scenario, which is what I've drawn earlier on, okay, is the one on the right. Okay, an increase in supply together with your demand being inelastic, okay, will cause your total revenue to fall. Okay, so I'm just going to pen this down. Increase in supply together with your demand is inelastic. Okay, this will cause your total revenue to fall. Can you all tell me what is the other condition? So obviously, okay, if it is not increase in supply, it has to be fall in supply, right? A fall in supply together with what is your PED, okay, will cause your total revenue to fall. Do you all know this? Okay, if you all can assess or if you all can deduce the size of your PED here, okay, I think you all are pretty much okay good for A levels really. Or you all probably understood okay clearly what I've said earlier on. So can you all make a deduction? Okay, what should be the size of your PED here in order to justify a fall in total revenue? Okay, KM, good. Good try. What about the rest? Okay, if you're ever unsure, you can always okay repeat this. You can draw it out yourself. Okay, if not, okay, I'm going to give you Okay, the simplified approach. Okay, you all can join me in drawing this. Okay, remember, we want to identify a fall in total revenue. Okay, so there are two possible approach. It's either an increase in supply together with a PED lesser than 1, which is what we have illustrated earlier on, or a fall in supply PED greater than 1. Okay, so from a diagram perspective, this is how it's going to look like. Okay, I'm just going to quickly jot this down. Okay, for the students who didn't get the drawing. Okay, so let me take another look. We want to illustrate a fall in supply and PED greater than 1. Okay, so supply curve must fall to the left. Right? And PED has to be as elastic as possible. Flat. Okay, so we can see that this is the initial price and quantity. Okay, as a result of a elastic demand curve, okay, all we need to is just to illustrate A, B, C. Right? Initial A and B. Final A and C. So it is not difficult to show that A and C is smaller. As a result of a fall in supply, demand being price inelastic, okay, you'll experience a fall in total revenue. So far, is everyone clear with this? This is just to help you to visualize, okay, what I have stated earlier on. So unfortunately, only one of the two options is correct. Only one of the two options is correct. So later on, your job is to identify the correct wet peaks factor. Okay, if you identify this, you must justify with wet peaks. Okay, if you identify this, you must also justify with wet peaks. Okay? And this will be an assumption. These two are not clearly visible in the extract. You have to make an assumption. Okay, but sometimes in the extract, they will give you PED value. They will tell you whether is it what the nature of the good. Okay, so later your role is to find out this and identify the correct wet peaks. Okay, and to justify the fall in total revenue. Okay, so is everyone clear with the thesis on the demand approach and selecting one of the supply approach? Clear? So ideally, you should allocate 6 marks, okay, to your thesis. Alright, so for the stronger students, I would like you to work on your antithesis. For the stronger students. If not, it is okay. We will address these together. Okay, the antithesis is hard. Okay, it requires you to look into specific assumptions. Okay, to critique on assumptions and to establish why is revenue unlikely to change, or under what form of assumptions will your revenue increase. Okay, in contrary to your thesis. Okay, so if you are conceptually stronger, okay, go for the antithesis. If not, I am happy with the thesis. Just work on your thesis. Focus on using the case material, identifying the Egypt and the wet peaks. Okay, especially when you identify the correct wet peak, you pair it with a PED to justify. Am I clear so far? Okay, so I hope you guys have copied this outline. Okay, I'm going to give you all 20 minutes to finish this. Okay, and after that, I will go through together. Okay? So write it out in full and all the best. Right, that's it. Time's up. Stop writing, everyone. Okay, once you're ready, please maintain eye contact. Okay, so this is the exact time, if not even lesser, okay, for an actual A-level question. Right? Okay, so I would drop the answer key, okay, on the Zoom chat segment. And I would expect the scripts to be turned in no later by 6:45. I'll be monitoring your scripts. Okay, any late submission beyond 6:45 will be given a 0, won't be marked. So can y'all check whether you have access to the answer key? I will activate the answer key tomorrow on the LMS. Okay, but for now, you probably need this for correction. Okay, do y'all have that? Do y'all see that in the chat function? Cheryl? Boys? Chat function, Don't have means don't have, I cannot do correct. Then you got to listen to what I say. Okay, so cutoff timing 6:45. Turn in your scripts no later by then. So with this, I'd like to hear from all of you. Maybe you can drop me in the comment segment. How do you all feel about this question paper? And maybe I may have a very unrealistic expectation or unrealistic interpretation of this question. Okay, so you may want to share with me how do you all find it. Is it easy, difficult, or doable? Whatever. Yeah? Okay, your response will not be disclosed. Don't be too worried about that. How do you find a question? Come on. Okay, some of you difficult. Hard to find the demand factor. Someone said it was alright. Can lah, quite okay, sure. We'll see how that goes, yeah, but okay, Mr. Teo won't be there forever with you. So whatever that I've covered here, okay, is a form of reverse engineering or reverse deduction. You got to know what the question wants before you know what you can find. Yeah, so what I'm pointing out here is what you should be looking out for, okay, based on the correct permutations. Okay, but unsure whether it fits the requirement, sure, okay, we'll find out in a short while. Okay, so look at my screen first, okay, and listen carefully on what I say. Okay, after that, okay, once I end the call between 6:30 and 6:45, you can do the correction on your own and turn in by 6:45. Yeah. So maybe I'll get one of y'all to try. Maybe I will get Cheryl. Okay, would you unmute yourself? So earlier on, okay, we have discussed that we need a demand factor, right? Okay, so for demand factor, okay, what is the demand factor that you have identified? Okay, would you like to share with the classmates? Unmute yourself.
Income.
Income. Okay, so how can we tell that it is an income factor? From where?
From the statement rising economic uncertainty.
Okay, so this is a very, thank you, Cheryl, thank you. Right, so always be concerned about what you want to look out for. Right, so if we know that more or less we want to find out income, then economic uncertainty. Economic uncertainty tells us that, okay, our income will be affected. Okay, there may be retrenchment. And what happens when there is economic uncertainty? Okay, demand of, okay, say mobile data, okay, is going to, or mobile devices or mobile platform, mobile plans are going to fall, right? Okay, and this will lead to a fall in total revenue. So like what I've mentioned, is important to identify, okay, or know what you want to find first. If you know this is the outcome, then we can work backwards. Okay, if not, it will be looking for a needle within a haystack. I can assure you it's not fun. Clear? So this program is exceptionally focused on practice and, okay, question and exposure. So this is how you get better. You only get better when you do hard questions. Yeah? Alright? So I will get one of y'all to try the supply factor. Maybe Jiaming, would you like to try the supply factor? And which supply factor have you identified?
I think increase in supply and inelastic demand.
Okay, so why is there an increase in supply?
Singapore now has 11 telcos.
Okay, so good. So like what I've mentioned, okay, it is always identifying the initial condition, right? For especially when there is a supply factor, you have to get the supply factor right. Okay, so the supply factor that you want to be concerned about is, okay, there are a lot of points that are telling you that there's a supply factor. More competition, right? Okay, and there is one more. Flooding 11 telcos. Do you see that? Okay, market liberalization. Market liberalization means what? What does liberalize means? Okay, it means that there is opening up of the telco market for more competition. So all this tells us that you see, and one more of this, intense competition. Okay, so these 4 points in green tell us that there is one specific alphabet in place. Okay, and the specific alphabet is number of sellers. Okay, I hope you guys identified that correctly. If you have anything that you want to check with me privately or drop it on the chat. Okay, if not, you can unmute, you can ask yourself. Okay, so we have identified this as the condition. This cannot be accepted. Okay, so this is, can supply factor be expectation of future price? Okay, sure, if you can justify this that is not in green, why not, right? Yeah, okay, I don't know, okay, but based on from my answer key, I only have web pics, okay, the last S. Okay, expectation of future price, I don't know. Okay, you can try submitting, then we can see whether is it right or wrong. Yeah, try to convince Mr. Teo. Yeah, if you can convince me, I'll give you the mark. Okay, if you confuse me, then too bad, you get nothing. Okay, so it's these two outcome only. You choose to convince, not confuse me. Okay, so you choose either of this. Web pics, okay, increase in supply. Then you can establish that. Then we have to make the assumption that PED is inelastic. Okay, so when you make PED assumption, okay, you have to stick to PANT. Okay, so maybe Jiaming, would you like to carry on, okay, to illustrate why is mobile data inelastic? Okay, what assumption did you make here?
I think the assumption I made was that it is a necessity.
It is a necessity?
Yeah, because I think I put like mobile data is dirt cheap, and then so it's not an issue, like so like they need to use it.
Right, okay, so necessity is good enough, you don't need the rest. Okay, so necessity. Okay, if you have any other interpretation, sure, so long as it fulfills PED is lesser than 1. Proportion of income spent, okay, is very little. Okay, or you can tell me that there is no available substitute when you're traveling. Okay. High degree of necessity, especially you have a high if you're watching Spotify, Instagram. Okay. Okay, time period is not a very good use down here. Okay, so any PAN, especially A and N, is very good. Okay, P is not so much. T is even not within the discussion. Okay, so important to get the supply factor right. Only one of these will point out to you the correct answer. If you chose the other and you made PED assumption greater than 1, okay, then it will be way off because the initial supply condition is not fulfilled, okay, of higher supply. Okay, so with this, okay, I will move on to the answer key. I would like you all to follow me closely. Okay, if you have any other factors that I'd like to check with me. Just now, one of you all check with me. I say that I will get back to you via marking. Yeah, okay, because offhand I don't know. I need to see how you justify. Yeah, but whatever that I stated here, they are very straightforward. They are to the point and they are easily identifiable. Okay, 1 mark will be given to defining total revenue. Check whether you have this. Okay, it will be the price times your quantity of your mobile data sold. If you don't have this, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. It's just 1 mark out of the 9. Okay. Clear? So long as you get the concept right, I think it's good enough. Still can pass. Okay, remaining 5 marks. The next mark, you need to illustrate how does the competitors or whatever will lead to increase in supply. Okay, so this is web pics. Okay, I'm highlighting the last alphabet for you guys to relate increase in supply. So I need to see increase in supply. Clear? You're citing the correct case evidence. Okay, take down your corrections in green. The third mark requires you to make an assumption of PED. Okay, mobile data is seen as a necessity. Therefore, demand is likely to be price demand inelastic. So as a result, okay, the rise in equilibrium quantity will be less than the proportionate fall in the equilibrium price. Therefore, there will be a fall in total revenue. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Okay, the one on the right hand side, okay, is to explain. You don't need to draw this, okay, but if you draw this, I think it's fine. Is to explain, okay, the words here. Okay, the rise in equilibrium quantity is lesser than the proportional fall in the price. Okay, so this is what is mentioned. So with this, okay, 3 marks will be allocated to supply and PED. 3 marks. The next 2 marks is to be allocated for demand factor. So you want to illustrate that rising economic uncertainty will lead to a fall in income and purchasing power and a fall in demand. I want you all to check this. Okay, these two are important criteria, okay, for income factor. Okay, you need to relate to income. See, Egypt. And you need to relate to purchasing power. Income and purchasing power comes hand in hand. Then we can deduce that there is a fall in demand. Okay, and this is assuming that this is a normal good. Okay, my H2 students, I'll explain to you what is the significance of a normal good next week. Okay, next Saturday morning. Okay, please come, important. And with a fall in demand, okay, there will be a fall in total revenue. Okay, so you need to justify that a fall in demand will lead to a fall in equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Right? So the diagram that satisfies this criteria is the one in orange. Fall in price and quantity. Okay, then price times quantity goes down. Your total revenue goes down. 2 marks for this. So far, questions on how the marks are allocated. So I want you all to check, okay, your concept of wet pigs and Egypt must be exceptionally clear. I need to see in one glance what is the factor. Alright, if you are taking too long to explain, that's no good. Or if you're not hitting the right points, also no good. Alright, for the stronger students who are conceptually more sound, let's look at the antithesis. The antithesis requires you to state an opposite stand. Okay, comment means opposite. So, under what circumstance or under what conditions will your total revenue remain the same or even rise? So, initially we predicted a fall, right? So, here are 3 points that I have for you. Number 1, okay, mobile data may not be price inelastic. Okay, so given that there is a substitute, okay, which is Wi-Fi, okay, when PED is elastic, okay, combined with increase in supply, this will result in higher total revenue. Okay, so this is the assumption that is criticized. Okay, this one. So instead of lesser than 1, now, okay, we critique that PED may not be lesser than 1. It could be greater than 1. So all this requires you to be very sensitive to this. Okay, the overall effects on your total revenue, then you need to deduce backwards. Okay, what is the assumptions that need to change in order to satisfy this? Alright, okay, the second point you can look at, okay, at magnitude. Okay, so the first one critiques on the assumption that PED can be greater than 1. Okay, the second one, the likely impact on the total revenue for mobile data would also depend on the relative extent of the change in demand. Okay, given that mobile data can be seen as a necessity, okay, so this is for my H2 students, this is what we'll be covering next week. Right, YED between 0 to 1. Necessity good. It's not a luxury good. Okay, so next week, okay, we'll be learning these 2 concepts, okay, of a luxury good and a necessity good. So what is simply telling you is the extent of your demand curve falling, okay, depending on the initial change in income. Okay, so this is how it looks like in the diagram. So if this is a necessity good, when there is a fall in income, okay, your demand curve will shift lesser to the left-hand side. So instead of the orange, okay, we shift somewhere in between. Okay, E2, the orange demand curve is a luxury, it can be used to depict luxury good. Okay, the one in green is a necessity good. So next week I'll explain more, okay, under the YED and XED concept. Okay, but for my H1 students, you don't need to know this, okay, but you can comment on, okay, the extent of your demand curve shifting. Or you can also talk about ceteris paribus, whether ceteris paribus holds. Right? So for instance, if there are other demand factors such as a taste and preference coming into the picture, then your total revenue may not necessarily fall. Okay, so there are a lot of creative usage or creative illustration on the comment part. Okay, so you don't need to use magnitude, you don't need YED concepts. Okay, you can also talk about ceteris paribus holding. Okay, so for instance, okay, when there is a increase in taste and preference for mobile data, okay, then the increase in demand may exceed the fall in demand due to income. Okay, so this is how we can play around. Okay, if we want to swap magnitude with ceteris paribus, we can also play with that. Ceteris paribus means all things remains the same. So if all things don't remain the same, then we can have this condition. Okay, or if the magnitude of increase in demand is the same, okay, as the fall in demand due to a fall in income, then there will be no change in your demand curve. Then total revenue will remain the same. Okay, so on hindsight, I think this is easier to understand. Ceteris paribus. Okay, whether there are additional factors present, there is not in the extract. Okay, but for my stronger students, you can consider, okay, critiquing on YED. Okay, the strength of your, or rather, the nature of your good, whether is it a luxury good or a necessity good. Okay, the effects on demand will be the extent of your demand shifting to the land will differ. So overall, your total revenue could remain the same or increase. So like I've said, okay, if you don't understand the antithesis, it's fine. Okay, I just need you all to start building an awareness on how to build counterpoints. How do we structure counterpoints? What assumptions do we critique, okay, for counterpoints? And it's to have the awareness that you have to state the counterpoint. Okay? So with this, okay, I have come to the end of the session. So for you guys, okay, that's with me, if you have any questions for me that you are not sure, you can stay back and ask me. Clear? Okay, I'll leave the room open. You can stay back and ask me. For students who are ready to leave, okay, I've attached the answer key. Okay, you can do your own corrections, scripts to be in by 6:45. Okay, if not, okay, I will pause the record